I met, my mentor who's, 76 years old, and she just so happened to be a psychologist. And she gave me some things to do, a list of things that I need to do, things that I need to meditate on, things that I need to pray through, quiet time.
Think
and
about,
all of
focus
that.
on,
Yep.
all that,
Just sit in it and really try to think back and try to remember me as a child.
Yeah.
5, like she said, 4 or 5, just really think back. I could not remember my past when my mom and dad were together, and they were together for 17 years and divorced when I was 9 years old. Yeah. But I didn't have any memory of them being together. And I always thought the reason why I didn't remember was because it must have been full of trauma.
Yeah.
That maybe I had a bad childhood.
Well, maybe it wasn't a bad childhood, but your parents splitting up, I don't know, because I don't remember it because I was so young, but I would imagine that's pretty traumatic at 9.
And I don't remember, I don't remember crying or, just going through that. I just did not remember. And so I wanted to remember. That's the thing. I knew that in order to fulfill whatever it is I need to fulfill in life, that there's healing that I need to go through. There's things that I need to resolve. And so I've been working on myself, and Miguel and I started to remember some things. Some things weren't that positive. There were
but there
some
were
traumas.
A lot that
there was
were.
A lot. Well, I'm talking about before I remembered what I remembered 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago when you and I were in the kitchen and Miguel is talking to me. And this is super, super crazy, you guys.
Let me tell you, the way that we got into it, we were talking about cars. We were talking about being kids. You
were talking about a situation
so
as a child.
We were talking about being scared as a kid. Yes. And what brought it up was running out of gas.
Yes.
And we started talking about when we were growing up, it seems like every kid or every person that's around our age or older probably has a memory or something of running out of gas, right? Mm-hmm. On the side of the road. Yeah. And we were talking, we're like, was that a thing that used to happen back in the day? Because everybody's got memories of that. Or was it that we were broke? I was like, because I do remember putting in $5 at a time of gas or a couple dollars here. You know what I mean? But I would remember there was one time where we ran out of gas and my dad jumped out of the car and I was a kid. I was scared. It's dark as shit on the highway. I was like, my dad's going to die going to get us gas. We're going to die out here. This is going to end fucking horrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you were telling me, you're like, and I think that's kind of what started triggering your memories.
Yes. So I remember being in Miguel sharing his story with me, his memory, and all of a sudden I looked down and I told him, I'm like, I remember being with my mom and my dad in her Monte Carlo, yellow Monte Carlo. And I'm like, my dad was leaving us and he had a gas can and he was leaving us. We had ran out of gas and he was leaving us. And I was so scared. And I remember just having that love for my dad because I didn't remember my dad. And
this was the first time that you had remembered your dad in your life as an adult, thinking about your dad at that age.
And I remember my mom telling me, you're so silly. He's going to be back. You're going to be fine. And after that memory, memory started to flood. It just started to flood over. And I started remembering homes that we lived in and childhood friends that I used to play with. My best friend Yvonne, who lived across the street. And I'm remembering all this stuff. And I don't remember exactly how old I was at that time, but I knew that I was young. I knew that I was like maybe 6 or 7, and I started to remember details, like the house was next to a church, and in that church I remember a pastor, and I remembered, that he was an older gentleman that was balding. He was balding and he was gray, and his height, like he was kind of tall. He was probably maybe like 6 feet. Or maybe I just thought he was tall because I was little at the time. Yeah. And then I started to remember my sister Diane, who's no longer alive.
Yeah.
And how she was with me and how close we were. And I started remembering my sister Lorraine as a teenager, or as a kid. And it was just so, so amazing. And what is so crazy is that the gifts I have today, I thought that they were new gifts. Me being able to feel energy, being sensitive to energy. And then I remember as a little girl being very scared in that house. Like it was a very scary feeling, a very weary, just crazy. And I'm talking to Miguel and I'm sharing this with Miguel, and I can feel what I was feeling as a little girl, just being scared in that house. And then I remembered my mom telling me that house was haunted, but I never remembered that house.
Yeah.
I never remembered that house. And then I started to remember, that my uncles and my aunts would come, and we would have all my cousins around, and we would just play. And the adults were my parents were party animals. They would party all the time. They would play poker all the time, with my aunts. And I started remembering how they were active. Like we used to go to the park and they would play handball and baseball and basketball, and it was all the couples together, just like hanging out, having a good time, and us cousins always together. And I mean, they were just pouring in. My memories were just, I was being flooded, and I was so overwhelmed with emotion. And poor Miguel, I couldn't talk.
Poor me.
Well, listen, I didn't know what you were thinking when I first started, because when these memories started to flood, I started to cry, and I put my head down, and I'm crying not just in tears, right? Like I am like,
we're sitting in the kitchen hanging
shaking,
out,
crying, like crying, because I had a sense of guilt that your childhood wasn't as bad as you thought it was.
Yeah, and that, that
like
reminds
we
me,
weren't as poor as I thought we were.